joint Board of Health and School Committee meeting tonight. Just have to read the Zoom laws. So the town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns related to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. These concerns are supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room, which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you call in by phone, use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So when the meeting can occur, so that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so that background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you call in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute and state their name and address. After speaking, we request that the participant return their microphone back to mute. So, Mike, you need to go back to get out, or?
Yes, I need to entertain a motion from the school committee to return to open session after being in executive session for the purposes of contract negotiation discussion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. I'll take a roll call vote. Timlin?
Timlin Rossius, yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Brad?
Brad Austin, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. So we're back in open session. Lisa, thank you.
Great. I guess for right now, what we want to talk about, I want to just have our board, if our board has any questions. Well, Mike, you want to say something, Mike?
Yeah, I'd just like to kick off the meeting by thanking you for inviting us to the Board of Health meeting to talk about your board's role as well as Jim Gareffi's role as Littleton's public health agent, specifically in respect to the schools reopening in Littleton in 2 weeks. I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that this is a Board of Health meeting and not a school committee meeting. We were invited to this meeting, and our goal is to have a discussion between the two boards on public health considerations regarding schools reopening. We're prepared to discuss topics such as protocols regarding any positive COVID-19 cases that occur in school buildings or among students and staff, contact tracing, COVID-19 testing and cleaning and disinfecting, and any other topics that are related to how the Board of Health and School Department will be working together. There'll be definitely, I anticipate, opportunity for public input on these types of topics and issues, but we will be asking people to focus their questions or comments specifically on those types of issues and not on questions or topics that are specific to the school committee, but definitely not related to the Board of Health or public health agent. If we get any specific questions or comments that are not public health related and are instead specific to only the school committee, we will ask that those questions or comments be brought to our next school committee meeting. But other than that, we're looking forward to having an informative meeting tonight, and we appreciate being invited.
We're happy to have you guys here. I was going to say the same thing when we got to residents' comments, that it's not about personal, their children's issues in school or just, yeah, like you said, public health and safety. So can we open it up to our boards first and see if any of our members have any questions?
I'd like to make a
Gino?
Yeah, the question is, are they going to have the full week? I understand they're only going to have 3 days a week. And how does it work if they can only put so many in a class?
Right. So students will be in the building on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And students will either be a Monday, Tuesday student or a Thursday, Friday student. And then Wednesday, all students will be remote. And that allows us to do a deeper cleaning of the building between the time the two different cohorts, as we're calling them, come to change places from in-person to remote. We'll also clean the building similarly on the weekends to prepare for the Monday, Tuesday kids coming in again after the Thursday, Friday kids.
That's very fair. Thank you. Thank you for
Yep.
answering my question.
And I just like to emphasize, that's our initial decision to open based on the current situation in terms of public health metrics and everything else. We are committed to reevaluating that as the year unfolds, and we may decide at any point that we need to go into remote only mode depending on how things shake out.
All set, Gino? Is that it? Okay. Kevin, did you have any questions or comments?
I was wondering if there was some information released on practices and protocols and how the situation will lay out. You know, should someone get infected or should someone show signs? Is there a flow chart or some sort of method that folks can easily?
Yeah,
understand?
the answer is yes. That information has been released and will continue to be released. But I'm going to actually let Dr. Clenchey, because he's the one who's actually releasing that information as administration. So, Dr. Clenchey, do you want to chime in on that?
Sure, thank you. We do have a simple schematic that we've developed that will give people some direction in terms of symptoms that they may have and what to do at that point in time. We're training all our staff in identification of symptoms as well. We're following the Department of Education's protocol manual in terms of dealing with cases of COVID-19, suspected cases of COVID-19. Our protocols are aligned with the CDC protocols as well.
And I'd just like to add on to that, Kevin, that we've had some talk and we started discussion about changing the norms is the way our staff is referring it to. So students and families and staff need to readjust how they come to school every day, how they get ready to come to school, how things are going between the days that they're in school. So there's going to be a lot of reinforcement of those basic concepts of what we expect in terms of behaviors while you're in school and determinations about whether or not it's a good idea for you to come to school on any given day based on all the guidance that we're getting. So it'll be an ongoing effort of education and reinforcement.
We've also worked with your staff and we've created a spreadsheet to track soft metrics as well, which will be very helpful.
Are the school nurses going to be in touch with the folks that are doing the contact tracing to try and expedite the discovery of information?
Yes, they are. Our nurses have been working with the Neshoba Boards of Health Nurse throughout this whole process.
Jim, how does that work?
How does the contact tracing piece, or how it integrates with the school, or
how it integrates with the school, I guess.
So, anytime somebody tests positive in town, our public health nurses receive that report from Massachusetts Department of Public Health and start the contact tracing process. So the person who's testing positive gets a phone call and kind of informed, instructed how to isolate. And they're also at that point in time are asked for all their close contacts. So then those close contacts can be called and instructed how to quarantine. The way it's going to integrate with the schools is that we're going to really rely on the school nurses. So Tamara Bedard, who's our public health nurse lead person, has actually had a conference call with a lot of the school nurses, Littleton's as well, about how that process should work. And even before that, the nurses all have a pretty good rapport with Tamara. So if they have a question, they just pick up the phone and ask. What will be really helpful for us to both effectively and as surgically as possible do this contact tracing is to know who's sitting where and who is in school on any given day. So they talk about cohorts in the plan. They talk about in the DESE guidance having assigned seating and attendance, so you know who was sitting close to that person in that classroom on any given day. Because that way there, if we get a case, we can reach out to the school nurse, reach out to the school itself and identify those people. Contact tracing is is good as someone's memory. And so having that backup, in this case with the school's attendance and seating records, makes it a lot more an effective process.
So will there be a situation where we can sort of cross-reference a Littleton resident and determine if they have a student in schools or a family member that's a staff member or something to that effect?
So maybe you can explain that a little bit more.
So if a name pops up and turns out they live in Littleton, is there a way to cross-reference it, or can we, access some sort of database that, that can be discreetly determined that the person maybe has a child in school or a staff member works in the school, just to sort of expedite the memory.
Sure. So I think what's going to happen, as part of that normal contact tracing process. So if you're the positive case, they have a case investigating tool that the state provides them. Series of questions, symptoms, where do you work? So that the nurse goes through that information there, and the nurses know that schools kind of high on everyone's list here. So those questions I'm sure will be included in there. I don't have the copy of the tracing tool in front of me, but that's where they're going to get that information. So, and again, with the lab report, they're going to see the age of the person who's tested. So they have that information. It's important to understand that this is medical information, and so we can't release it. So nurses can talk, because that's kind of that HIPAA allowed. And so things that are going to be important for contact tracing is if you get a phone call from either the Neshoba Board of Health or the Contact Tracing Collaborative, you need to pick it up because there's a reason we're calling. We don't just randomly call people in towns to talk with them. And again, it really is truly important that we get in touch with you, because that's what's going to expedite that process. And I say that because our nurses have gotten kind of savvy on phone numbers and ages. So, if they see a younger person's age and they call a number that doesn't look like the typical exchange in the community, they realize they may have to text that person to get them to respond back to them. So they kind of get a sense of who they need to call and how they need to get in touch with that person. So our goal is really to make sure we can do it as quickly as possible. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, the school community may know before we know that somebody's tested positive in your school. I'm just going to, because that has happened in other situations where it's either, the family gets the information's out on Facebook. We won't confirm anything. So if you call me and say, hey, there's a Facebook room where so-and-so's tested positive, I'm not going to confirm that because that's medical information and I can't do that. Hopefully that person will pick up the phone call if they truly are the person who's tested positive, and all the close contacts. So.
What happens if they don't pick up?
Early this spring, we actually were running letters out to people's houses saying, hey, look, you tested positive, give us a call.
And that's 7 days later?
It's that's why it's so important. Again, if you look at the school's reopening guidance, they have a communication plan, and the superintendent spoke to that, and that continual reinforcement that this piece of this puzzle, this piece of keeping the schools open is really important.
Thank you.
Jim, in regards to what you just talked about, you talked about a case in town. What about kids that are in for school choice that live out of town?
So we won't get that information unless they're in one of the district. One of the one of the communities in which Neshoba covers as a regional health district. Mm-hmm. And so I think in the school's plan, it talks about the families informing the school of situations where a child is tested positive. Same thing with staff. If staff doesn't live in town or in one of the towns in the district, we won't get that report. So the only way we know about that is if they report it.
Is there a way to leverage that database to sort of take the human error out of it and expedite us learning about, not names or anything, but, from medical professional to medical professional?
So that is the state's database, and we get to use it. We're authorized users on the database. They set it up. They've designed it to handle the situations. And so you have to be an approved user to access that. And again, part of that is, essentially confirming that you understand that's confidential information, that you're not going to release it.
Is there a way to get school nurses in there?
There is a possibility to do that. Again, it's one of those things where the boards of health, so your board of health is the legal authority to do contact tracing in town. And it, you know, it doesn't, in all of the other things that a school nurse is probably doing during the course of the day, you know, that's one of the reasons why we have a nurse that can communicate with the school nurses and work that out.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mike Zeldin, do you have any questions at all or comments that you want to make?
You're muted.
Okay, I guess I was muted before. This is Gino. Can I speak to Jimmy for a second?
Sure.
Okay, hey, Jim.
Yep.
If a child is sick, but he doesn't really feel sick and he's getting fever and he doesn't say anything because he doesn't feel it. Now, is the obligation of when he goes to school is going to be, they're going to check him out. Am I correct?
So if you read the school's guidance plan, they have a sheet where you're supposed to monitor your child and staff are supposed to monitor every day. And there's a list of questions that need to be monitoring. So this is where families and staff really need to, they're an active part of this plan. So every day you need to ask that question. And I think that's how the school's plan words it. Ask that question, whether I'm ready to go to school today because I'm, you know, maybe I'm not feeling well, stay home. I mean, that message of if you're not feeling well for any reason, stay home, protects the whole school community.
I hope that will work. We'll say a prayer for them. Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
On that theme, Gino, the idea is that because we have the remote learning option available to them, it's not like they would necessarily miss a day of school by virtue of not coming to school. And that's what we're hoping is going to incentivize people to be more conservative about making that decision about, do I go to school? Do I send my child to school that day? Sometimes in a regular year, it's like, well, he might have a cold. I don't know. And gee, I'd hate for him to miss a day. And some kids, believe it or not, actually want to go to school every day. They're kind of adamant about it. This is an opportunity for families to say, look, you're not going to school. You still get to be in class. You're just not going to go to the building. That again is that idea of reinforcing those changes in norms is going to be very important.
This is Mike. Speaking of norms, this may be having attended some of your meetings, I'm pretty sure where you're heading with this, but I take it that your effort to, I'll call it, reinforce and sustain the masking, social distancing, and hygiene will be in especially high gear. Is there anything, as it were, given this a slightly different setting than a student being at home or doing it remotely for those students who are in school, is there anything special or distinctive that you want to point out, maybe to advise parents that that they and their children are being protected with the three major components of keeping transmission down?
Dr. Clenchey, do you want to address how we're doing that on a day-to-day basis and integrating that into our school day for our students and staff?
And we're also going to be sending information home to our parents on all those areas. Our nurses have created documents, so they'll be going home soon to parents. We're going to certainly spend time teaching our students how to put on masks correctly and take them off correctly, the importance of hygiene, washing hands, or using sanitizer when you touch your face or take your mask off or before you put it on. We're also going to send some information out to parents and reinforce it in the school in terms of what masks are acceptable. We're looking for masks with 3 layers, etc. So it is a bit of a learning process. We've encouraged our parents to have their children start to wear masks prior to school starting. We've been fortunate to have a park and rec program run this summer where a number of our younger students have had an opportunity to experience wearing masks throughout the day. We also have mask breaks planned throughout the school day as well, which is important. And we are also well stocked with extra masks in case we need them.
Excuse me, everybody. Can I just make an announcement for the audience that we are having a joint discussion right now between school committee and Board of Health. There will be time after our discussion for public input and questions. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
And I have one more question then. Also, I have a pretty good idea, but I think it may be useful in general to just repeat. This could come from both Jim as well as from the school, but I'd like to be very clear what is the, as it were, the sphere of influence and jurisdiction and the role for the Board of Health, that is the elected Littleton Board of Health, in making decisions and providing support to the schools.
I guess I could take a crack at that first, Mike. As I read through the DESE guidance, it's really the school committee who has the authority to close schools, open and close. And as you read through the guidance documents, it clearly states that they should take certain actions with consultation with the Board of Health. So that, as I see it, is our role. Your role as the elected board is to consult with them on issues related to the health and safety of the students and staff in the building. Our public health nurses already reached out to the nurses, and again, they have a good rapport, so they're already doing that consultative piece. So I don't know if Dr. Clenchey wants to expand on that.
I think, Jim, you've covered it. It's key that our communication continues to be something we do on almost a daily basis, and the soft metrics that we're going to be collecting certainly will be shared with Tamara. And we're in this together. We want to keep our community safe. This goes beyond our schools. It's about our whole community. I don't think you can separate school from community when you're dealing with a pandemic. So we want to make sure that our procedures and processes are consistent throughout the town. We're very fortunate in our town to have Chief Wodzinski, who's been working very closely with us as well. He's on the front lines and certainly is talking to our staff this week about proper hygiene and mask wearing, et cetera. And we'll also bring him in to talk to our students as well.
As the chair of the school committee, I'd like to reiterate something too. We had a conversation about this in a working meeting, a meeting of the chairs, and what we agreed to after talking was that there could be a scenario where the Board of Health is telling us that, gee, we really don't think it's wise for you guys to stay in person, and we may disagree. But I don't think I almost can guarantee that's not going to happen. What is a more likely scenario is that the Board of Health is going to say, well, you guys actually could probably stay open if you wanted to. Things are, not as good as they were a couple of weeks ago, but they're not terrible. And the guidance that we see and the advice that we get indicates that you could stay open. And we might be like, no, we're not. We're gonna go remote for at least a while because we think that's the right thing to do. We appreciate that the Board of Health is responsible for all aspects of public health, not just the schools. And evaluating what might be right for a grocery store or an office park is not applicable necessarily as directly applicable as we would like to think it was for a school system. So we're keeping that in mind. We want your input. We're going to respect it. But I would think that we're going to be minimally in agreement and likely even more conservative than you guys would typically be, because you're looking at it from a viewpoint of how to advise everybody. And we're looking for what's best for our students and staff and families.
Okay. Louise, did you get connected?
I apologize. For some reason, my video is not working tonight. I don't know why. I can't figure it out. But Mike, I so appreciate all the planning that you and all the committee members and teachers have done. I've watched one of your meetings. I think it was the August 20th meeting that showed you all going through a presentation at each school. You all took a bus ride, and that was really impressive to me. It shows all the thought that has gone into you getting ready for the start of school. And I agree. I think that you will be more careful in your decision about opening or closing school, because you've got all the kids there right in your hands. So I think you will be very careful with that decision. So it sounds like you're doing everything right to me.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, 47 pages and then some, right?
Yeah.
That's the reopening on this, on the town
Yeah.
website.
Yeah, the plan.
Yeah. I think we just got an email this week, something about flushing buildings. Is that something that's going to be happening, or does that just happen when they open the schools, or is that something that they're going to be doing, you know, on a regular schedule?
So you're like related to like the HVAC running to bring?
I'm not, let me see, it was,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
it from Jim this morning that we got to,
Flushing the water systems, make sure all the systems are working in the building. Yeah,
is that just for the initial reopening, Jim, or is that something that?
that's right. Part of the concern was the buildings were closed down, and so they really want to make sure everything's flushed before everyone's getting back in there. Make sure
Okay.
everything's working. And
I assume you guys have already done that.
Yeah, so I can address that. So the buildings haven't been closed down all summer. They've actually been open and active all summer with various projects and staff in the building. So we have been running those systems. So we are at this point in time running the HVAC systems at least 2 hours before school opens and at least 3 hours after school closes. In some cases, I believe it's 4 hours after school closes, just to make sure that air gets moved and turned over in the building. As far as the water systems, again, people have been in the buildings all summer, and so those water systems have been flushed and being used on a daily basis.
And just to reiterate, the schools are quote unquote open. Our staff have been on site for 2 days now. Students won't be on site until they'll start classes on September 16th, and the first group of in-person learners will be in the buildings on Thursday, the 17th.
So you guys talked about how the schools have been open all summer. We've had Camp T, and Camp T was actually very successful in terms of no cases at all during the summer.
Yeah, that's correct. Dr. Clench, do you want to talk a little bit about Camp Tehadawon and how they used our facility?
Sure. They were at Shaker Lane this summer. There were no positive cases. Their protocols are pretty well identical to what we're using. Talking to Park and Rec staff, they belong to a group of towns or Park and Rec departments, 400 of them. All 400 ran programs similar to Camp T, and there was no identified cases of COVID-19.
That's awesome.
I have a question for Mike, Lisa, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
So I was just thinking, Mike, at every school in Littleton, that different ages to deal with, and do you have like a plan in place for kids that what will you do with kids that repeatedly won't wear a mask? Or I don't know. Have you talked about that?
Yeah.
Each age group will have a different issue of why they don't want to wear a mask.
Right. We have talked about it. We said that, the younger kids are just, not paying attention, and they're young, and their ability to realize the impact of their actions in a moment by moment basis is a little limited. And then high school students just, want to be contrarian. I got 3 contrarians living in my house. And I remember being quite contrarian back in my day. And I apologize to my parents. I know better now. Having gone through it. But Dr. Clenchey, we've talked about that, and your staff has some strategies for, and they're age appropriate and in specific age. Well, why don't you give us a rundown of what that entails?
I'm sure. I mean, certainly they're age specific, and with our younger children, we need to have those conversations of why it's important. It may be as simple as increasing the number of mask breaks that we have. With older students, we would have those serious discussions in terms of it's your responsibility to help prevent the spread of this virus, and we need to all work together to make this happen. These aren't optional things. These are practices that are required when you go out in public. So we need to work together. I don't anticipate this to be a concern. I anticipate there will be some conversations with some of our older students, but Our younger students, I'm convinced, especially after seeing what happened with Camp T this summer and having a granddaughter that's 5 years old who puts on her mask every time she goes outside to go somewhere. It's a matter of what we're doing needs to become habitual as we move forward, because I don't anticipate not having to wear masks in public for a while.
Right.
Yeah, I'm kind of, sorry.
I just want to echo that in the discussions that we've had about this at our school committee meetings, the principals have definitely stressed that it's a scale, right? So if a child or a student is struggling, it starts with a gentle reminder. And then if they continue to still struggle, it's a more firm, remonstration. And then, if at that point it's obviously open defiance, then that's a different level of intervention from, what the impact is or what the repercussions are. So we're going to be, working that sliding scale with each student and each group. And as Dr. Clenchey indicated, we're hopeful and very optimistic that it's going to be on the lower end of that scale for the level of intervention required. But, we're going to do what we have to do in the long run to make sure that we're getting the compliance that is truly necessary to make this model work.
So if you have a child that is not cooperating, would they be switched to remote learning?
That would be the outcome we don't want, but is certainly something that we can consider given a particular circumstance. Yep.
Mm.
Lisa, this is Mike Selden. Can I ask a question?
Of course, Mike, go ahead.
The question I have is there any attempt can be made to sort of keep a running log or a running account of how things are going, especially if something that no one could anticipate occurs and you get a certain reaction? I'm just thinking about making sure we get as much out of the experience as possible, because what the future holds remains unclear, even with the vaccine, assuming one appears. So I know you already have your hands full with what's in front of you, but I just want to make sure that there's sort of a running account that can be recovered later so that we can, as it were, not have to go through the whole from scratch should something else occur, which is bound to be.
And I'll let Dr. Clenchey speak to that in terms of the actual detail of how that will be accomplished. But from a school committee perspective, we fully expect to be updated on, we typically meet every other week during the school year. We will probably start out meeting every week. We've been doing that this summer, and then we're going to continue that. And the expectation is that those meetings, a lot of the agenda will be devoted to, or a portion of the agenda will be devoted each week to an update on how we're doing in terms of compliance with the public safety and health aspects of what we're trying to do. And just as importantly, in some ways, an assessment of how the delivery of curriculum is going and things like that. So we, as the oversight committee, are going to hold the administration accountable and require that we are updated on a regular basis, and through us, the community will be as well. But Dr. Clenchey, would you like to talk about how you guys are envisioning the details and mechanisms for being able to keep track of that information?
Well, and I mean, we have multiple data sources that we use even without the pandemic. Those sources will continue to be made. I mean, we analyze data throughout the whole year to make decisions regarding what we're doing in terms of best practices in the classroom, or we evaluate our safety and security in our schools, and this will be no different. We have an added data source we'll be using, and that would be those soft metrics that will be shared daily with central office, and we'll do weekly reviews of that data. So I think it is important to have a summary of how things are going. I mean, we can certainly learn from what we've done, and hopefully when we do find the light at the end of the tunnel, we just don't know how long it is, we will certainly have that information as part of our corporate history if for some unfortunate experience we have to go through something like this again.
And one other thing that I don't think has been mentioned explicitly, I've heard some comments, awareness of it, but this is extracurricular. Once students of a certain age, people of a certain age get together, even semi-socially in the school setting, I'm thinking about parties and other informal get-togethers. I was just wondering if there's, you're including in your presentation to the students concerns about parties and get-togethers after school.
I mean, that will be part of our education program, and middle school and high school, we're fortunate to have Mike Lynn, our athletic director, who's done a terrific job, and he's really good about getting those messages out, and he'll certainly continue to do that in an expanded fashion. So, but I have to also make a comment that in order for this to work, it has to be the community working together. It can't be just our schools. It has to be everybody understanding the importance of adhering to these protocols. And if we do that and we take this seriously, we'll continue to have a safe community.
I don't have kids in school. I was just wondering about the emergency pickups. If somebody is displaying symptoms, that what, a half an hour that they have to be picked up?
That's correct, and we do have isolation rooms in each school. We're actually hiring some additional staff to help our nurses out, so that if there's more than one student that's showing symptoms, we have the staff to help out.
Mm-hmm. And are the forms, are you going to have, my kids, I think there were 2 or 3 emergency contacts. Are you expanding those so that they'll be, I know everybody's working from home, a lot of people are working from home, so maybe they're a little bit more flexible, but have you thought about expanding that to giving more emergency contacts?
That's something we really haven't thought about. That's something we can certainly consider, and in all fairness, maybe the nurses in the schools have figured that out, and they just haven't reported that to me yet. So I'm going to write that down, and it's not a bad idea. The more contacts you have in these kinds of situations, the better.
Lisa, can I ask Scott Wodzinski what his experience is with going into the schools and starting the training?
I was just going to ask Scott to chime in patiently.
So Deputy Clancy had begun the pre-inspections of the schools, and he has gone through just to at least look at the COVID rooms that are in each building, and those are in process. Some of them are established, and some of them are being improved upon. I spoke today to the Russell Street school staff meeting as well as the high school staff meeting, and just to pretty much reassure everybody and refresh everyone's memory of the social distancing guidelines, wearing masks, simple hygiene, washing your hands, and just really reviewing that stuff and talking about how important it is, and most of all, if you're sick, stay home. That's that's for staff as well as students, and how important that is. But yeah, at this point, it's just simple awareness, kind of a refresher, hopefully, and make sure that everybody's on the same page. So I'm sure that'll be changing as we move forward in the next couple of weeks. People will have questions and concerns, and we'll deal with those on a daily basis, I'm sure.
Great, thanks, Scott. Kevin, you got your hand up?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was going to ask Chief and present this to everyone here. I don't know if it might make sense to maybe implement some sort of COVID officer at each school location, just someone to help sort of regulate with the kids and make sure everyone's following rules, given that the teachers and the administrators sort of have a whole other list of concerns. I don't know if that might make sense, just to get another set of eyes on things.
Just at first blush on that, you would hope that between the principals and all of the teachers, everybody would be, stepping up to the plate to really pay attention across the board, to make sure that everybody is, doing the proper thing, wearing your masks when you're walking the halls, or if you need to go to the bathroom, or you're up and moving around, and you know that you're washing your hands, using hand sanitizer, everything like that. It's really going to be up to everybody to do their part and police each other.
It seems like we've also, going back into school in September, we've had a lot of training. The kids have had a lot of training on their own with social distancing and hand sanitizing and wearing a mask since March. So going into school, they've already had 6 months of this. So you would think, yes, that it was kind of understood that that's what they have to do. So
I just think if
another question. I'm sorry.
telling them what to do, they listen better.
I'm sorry.
If Kaz is there telling them what to do, they listen better.
And you're nominating him as the COVID czar.
Yeah.
I guess I have a question maybe for Steve, and it's probably just obvious, but water fountains are going to be closed, not available.
Yes.
Don't we have water bottle fillers or something like that in the schools?
Yeah, so the water fountains will be shut off. If we can shut the water off, we will. If we can't, we'll have covers for them. We have water bottle fill stations at 3 of the schools right now. There is no water bottle fill station at Russell Street. We are in the process of getting a fill station to install. That will probably be installed sometime mid-October is when they're supposed to be shipping that to us. That it was back ordered from the manufacturer and the supplier, but that is on order. But the other schools all have water bottle fill stations that are open and will be functioning.
Do you think that's a good idea? That's a lot of ways to get contaminated.
Well, that's one of the recommendations from the Department of Education and the State Board of Health is to have water bottle fill stations where students have their own water bottles. They're touchless. They just put the bottle up there. It's touchless. They don't touch it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments? Should we move on to the?
And I'm sorry, for Russell Street School, until that water bottle station is installed, we will have bottled water available for students if they need it.
Okay. Mike Fontanella, do you have anything more to say before we go into the public comments at all?
No, just to summarize, we've definitely established contact with the Board of Health, primarily with the public health agency, the nurse and Jim, and we think that's where the bulk of the support needs to be for us on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully, having it there is good to know. Hopefully we won't really have to take advantage of it, but knowing that the protocols are in place and they've already been talking, I think gives us a level of assurance that, if we do need to take advantage of it, everybody will be ready. And again, it's not like we don't talk to the Board of Health already. Our nurses definitely have a relationship with them. It's just going to be, more this year, more pronounced, more likely that we're going to have to take advantage of it on a more regular basis to one degree or another. So that's definitely helpful. And then I appreciate Jim's comments related to how he perceives the role of the Board of Health and his own role as a public health agent. And we're supportive of that. We want to hear from you guys. But we expect that, we will be the decision makers ultimately, and we're ready for that. And we're ready to do the steady evaluation and regular review to make sure that the initial decision we made is reasonable. And if it becomes unreasonable, we will quickly shift gears.
Great. All right. So before we go on to the public comments, I just want to let everybody that's in the audience, there's 123 participants right now. Just want to let you know that these are just questions about the health and safety regarding reopening the schools. You will have 3 minutes to ask your questions and your comments. We have our moderators that will mute you after 3 minutes because we've got a lot of people on the meeting tonight that want their questions asked and answered. So I guess, Dave, are you Are you moderating? Who's Janet or Dorothy?
Dorothy.
Okay, thanks, Dorothy.
We're both here, Lisa.
All right, I need all the help I can get. All right,
Are we starting now?
I guess we can start, yeah.
Davis family, please state your name, your street, and your question, please. Davis family, you're muted.
Thank you.
Thank
Hello,
you.
my name is Kevin Davis. I live at 35 Whitetail Way. It's encouraging to hear everyone talking about contact tracing, and I know I've asked the school board this very question several times. Have any of you sat down and done a tabletop exercise to practice how you do contact tracing? Have you thought about use cases where a student is infected and isn't in the classroom the entire time and has moved amongst different classes and different parts of the building?
Jim, I guess that's more of a question for you.
So
Thank you.
an actual tabletop, no, but since March, the middle of March, our public health nurses have been doing contact tracing on a regular basis, and really got a deep dive into it, certainly during April and in May when the cases spiked. To your point about the student moving through the school, again, we're going to rely on the school to have a good sense of the wherewithal. I mean, where the location of the student and the time where the student is to help us do that contact tracing in the most efficient way possible. I think it's important to note that close contact is what we're concerned with, and that close contact is 10 to 15 minutes at less than 6 feet. So, a casual passing in the hallway wouldn't necessarily count as a close contact. We're also relying on layers of protection, such as keeping people distanced, keeping people their masks on, hopefully keeping people home that are sick. So again, it's multi-layered to try to make sure that we can prevent the need actually for contact tracing. But our public health nurses are pretty well versed at doing that.
Great, thanks, Jim. Dorothy, next caller? Or next caller, I sound like, where am I? I'm on the radio, I'm on Sports Talk.
EW, your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, this is Eileen Wiedegardner on Maplehurst Road. I have a series of questions.
Eileen, you're up to 3 minutes, so ask them fast.
Okay, well, don't interrupt me and I will. I want to ask about one, how safe the buildings are with their ventilation. How do parents know how well the students, how well the buildings are ventilated? Are we going to get something that says they've passed? 2, when we talk about the idea of contact tracing, it's only students who've been within 6 feet of other students. And I'm curious as to why that was the choice besides the CDC guidelines. I mean, when a child has lice, the whole class gets notified. Why wouldn't the whole class get notified if a child also has COVID? And at least parents would be in the know about what's going on, whether they have to quarantine or not. And then on top of that, so we have the ventilation in the school, the contact tracing, and then I have another question around what we're relying on students to be, or parents to honestly, to tell schools like, this is how we're doing these feelings every day. We're saying the kids are feeling this. I don't know what all the soft metrics are, but do we have any idea how many parents absolutely need to send their kids to school every day and how much that could interfere with people telling you what's going on? like we're relying on this, but at the same time, we also have parents that need their children to be in school. Anecdotally, I've heard, need their children to be in school so they can go to work. I guess that would be my 3 questions for now.
So I guess I've heard in the meetings that we've had, Mike Fontanella and Steve Mark, that the HVAC systems are running and doing well.
So we have had our steady work done by our contractor for HVAC. That's ongoing. That will continue to be ongoing. They're a pretty constant presence in our schools. In a normal year, they'll have an even more pronounced presence. We are upgrading our filtration on our rooftop units and on our classroom units. In terms, we also have just started talking to an engineering firm to bring them in to do another assessment. We've already had one assessment done by our contractor, but we think it would be worthwhile to have an engineering firm. There are other districts that are going through this, so we thought it would be something that we would consider doing. And after talking to the engineering firm, we're going to go ahead and do it. So they'll come in and do another assessment of the rooftop units and the classroom units, but they'll also do an assessment of the building and give us some additional measures that we can take. Some of the things they're going to recommend are things that we were already doing, like upgrading the filtration level, increasing the amount of fresh air that gets circulated through the devices, opening windows and increasing air circulation. We're all doing all those kinds of things, but they have some other additional strategies that we think will be worthwhile, especially as we get into the time of year when we can't use open windows. It's just not going to be feasible. So we are contracting with them. They're pretty busy, so it's going to be a couple of weeks before they get into us. And I think they're turning around their reporting time pretty quickly. But once we have that, we will present it at a school committee meeting. It'll be available for public consumption. In terms of families trying to determine which families, quote unquote, have to send their kids to school, there's no way we could possibly make that determination.
That's not what I was asking.
Okay.
What I was asking was, when you do have a case in the school, the message I got was that only the kids that were in 6 feet of another child would be notified. But meanwhile, the Board of Health and the school's protocol is that if a child in a classroom has lice, everyone gets a notification. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is, why doesn't that information transfer? I understand that you may not have to quarantine all those students, but shouldn't the parents have notification that it's happened?
Jim, do you want to address that relative to the contact tracing? And I think I can maybe address it a little bit towards the notification process beyond contact tracing.
Sure. So again, back to the contact tracing, it's a respiratory virus. They've determined that 6 feet is that distance at which you may be susceptible to catching that virus if you're breathing air that has that. So that's why we do the 6 feet. And so 6 feet around that person, even if they're wearing masks, we're going to contact those individuals and let them know that they're close contacts if they meet that definition. And we'll instruct them to do their quarantine as required by the state of Massachusetts.
Right.
But there wouldn't be a classroom notification.
Not by the Board of Health relative to the contact tracing aspect of it. But Dr. Clenchey, can you give us a rundown of the protocols relative to how we're anticipating doing notification on that type of situation?
I'm just actually looking at the document just to confirm the statement I'm going to make. One thing about this whole process is we're talking thousands of pages, not hundreds of pages. If in an elementary school and we have a student in a self-contained classroom that tests positive, we would send a notice home to parents, letting them know that there was a positive identification in their class. The protocols change in middle school, high school, where they're not in self-contained classrooms.
What are those protocols?
Those protocols really depend on. They're not black and white. It depends on where the student has been, and we look at their schedule, etc. That one certainly is going to be more involved. No matter what way you try to keep cohorts in the same classroom, when you look at middle school and high school, there's going to have to be some class movement. So that'll be a much more complicated process.
Jim, do you have anything else to add?
No, and I think to Dr. Clenchey's point, that the assigned seating and the attendance is going to be really important to help inform that decision that he's talking about. We want to know, who might be considered close contacts. Again, if a person spends, a minute or two walking across a hallway, that doesn't mean that the people in that hallway are close contacts. But if he's sitting or she's sitting in a classroom for 15 minutes on either side of the hallway, that may make a difference. So again, back to Dr. Clenchey's point, we'll need to take a look at that.
And can I just ask for clarification, Dr. Clenchey? I guess it's a little bit more obvious that in the elementary setting, they're in the same classroom every day, and we expect that they're in the same desk. But even though we have movement between classrooms at the middle school and high school level, we're still requiring assigned seating once they get into the particular classroom that they'll be in for that period, correct?
That's correct. We're even going to the detail of assigning, if we can, specific desks. So they won't be sharing desks. So we're doing everything we can, and we will be monitoring traffic flow. I mean, our students have schedules. It's easy to trace with talking to the people in the building, and also, if necessary, using our cameras. We can certainly, if we have a time period, we can certainly trace to see where that student has gone. But we're dealing with older students as well. I think the conversations are going to be a lot easier than if we had elementary students not staying in their classroom. It would be a little harder to get the information we need, but they will be in classrooms and cohorts.
Great. All right, Dorothy, you have the next person.
Okay. Is CB, state your name and your address and your question, please. CB, are you there? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Barbara Dickman, state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, my name is Barbara Dickman. I'm a teacher at the middle school. My question is regarding—
Barbara, can I have your where you're from, please?
Oh, I live in Westboro, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my question is, if the health metrics worsen to the point where we go remote again, the teachers are all under the impression that we would still be required to teach in the school versus the safety of our—
Hold on a second, Barbara. I think that's
Barbara, that's a
not
question
we're talking about.
Right. We would prefer to have that question addressed at the next school committee meeting, and we're happy to do that there. We're trying to focus on questions relative to public health matters that pertain to ostensibly to the Board of Health, as well as the school department.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a reminder to anybody that's waiting, again, these are not questions about your particular student or if you're employed with Littleton Public Schools, part of your job description. This is all about questions regarding health and safety of the school buildings when we reopen. So next one, Dorothy.
Nalina, please state your name, your address, and your question, please.
Hi, I'm Nalina Backman, and I live on Oak Avenue in Belmont, Massachusetts, and I'm a teacher at the high school. And I was curious, how is the town resourced, if at all, to facilitate or publicly advocate that members of the Littleton Public School community, students, families, and staff, engage in some form of regular proactive testing, even if that had to be just on their own initiative, particularly as we know that unsymptomatic cases are very common among young people, so that when you catch them, they may not appear sick. And for those who have begun to exhibit symptoms, we also know that they very well were contagious before they exhibited symptoms and would have tested and could test positively to that degree. So I'm just curious about what resources the town working with the school could perhaps cobble together to really encourage people to think about getting ahead of the game in terms of getting themselves a test if they might even suspect that they themselves were exposed.
Where'd Jim go? Is he still here?
I'm still here.
Oh, there you are. Can you speak to that at all, Jim?
So I can't really speak to how the school might facilitate some, a testing program. I think what I would like to say is that the public health protocols that are in place, the distancing, the mask wearing, the staying home if you're sick, that you're really considering whether you should be in school that day, those are all far more important, I think, than a regular testing program. Because part of the problem with testing is there's a number of different tests.
Sure.
then you get into the matter of interpreting what the test means. If somebody's getting an antibody versus an antigen or a molecular test, there's a logistic issue for the school. Do you collect the test? Do you keep the kid in or staff out if they don't do the test? So it becomes, I think the value that we get is in following the public health protocols.
And I also echo that when the pandemic started and we got a little bit past and we had to close schools, and then there was some initial discussion about reopening the economy and businesses and schools. Testing was something that was featured as part of the likely strategy. But then the government got away from that, and they have provided no resources to public municipalities or schools or guidance. As Jim said, we don't even know if we did want to test, what's the correct way to test. We have no guidance on that from the state or federal government. We definitely don't have any resources to pay for it or process it or deal with it. I personally am disappointed that that's the case. I continue to read and see what's going on. There is talk that testing and the way we think about testing relative to COVID-19 and trying to get to a rapid test that maybe is a little less accurate, but is still predictive and beneficial. A lot of that is being bandied about, but none of it has been put towards us in terms of guidance or direction that we feel we can act on. And again, we have no resources right now to be able to do it, even if there was direction. That's really a question. It's a good question. It's a good concept. It's important. But it's got to get fought at the state and federal level before it can get fought at the municipal level.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Dorothy?
Thank you, Nalina. Matthew Ridge, your street and your question, please. Matthew?
Yes, sorry. 325 Great Road. Name is Matthew Ridge. Two things. I've been listening and everything else, and one of the things that bothers me or worries me is that you say that we have to trust. We have to trust the parents. We have to trust the children. My son just came from a preschool. He was there for almost 2.5 years before this COVID started. And I'll tell you right now, when flu season came around, when they had foot and mouth, you name it, it didn't matter. The kids went to school and infected everybody. I can't tell you how many times my kid actually had a cold. I mean, we called the preschool a walking petri dish for a reason. It wasn't because it was funny. It's because we expected during the flu season, our kid was going to get the flu. When new kids showed up, there was guarantee of foot and mouth, whatever. But still, what's going to happen if we keep on seeing the same people bring their kids in when the kids are sick? I mean, a slap on the wrist? Are we going to tell them they have to go remote? I mean, this is something that is going to be detriment to us ultimately unless we get an answer, because this is going to be something that's going to, I'm sure a lot of people are going to worry about, are their kids actually going to be safe? You could put as many walls up as you want saying that this is going to happen, this is protection, this is that. But if somebody walks right in and says, my kid's healthy, drops him off, and he turns out he has COVID or he has the flu, the entire school's infected in one way or the other, especially flu. But I mean, or at least that classroom. Now the other problem, the other issue I'm having is that if you still haven't come I'm hearing also that the school board is saying that, don't worry, health board, we are going to watch ourselves. If we find out that something's going on, we'll shut ourselves down. Okay. What if some new information comes out and says that 6 feet isn't an answer anymore? Because there was a British study that just came out, that's just been published within the last week, that says 12 feet is now the mandatory setting over in England. and 20 feet is what should be used when outside, like inside the supermarkets and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's new stuff coming out all the time, like you said, but we need to know what's going to happen when the goalposts change, because as far as I know, they already have.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. That's the 3 minutes. Kevin, did you want to?
I just want to respond really quickly. I think that, Matthew, I appreciate your concerns. I think you have to trust that people are inherently good and are going to do the right thing and follow the guidance. I also think that, there's a lot of anxiety in town right now, but all over the world probably. And we have a lot of good, smart folks in town that it might make sense. And I don't know how everybody on this screen feels, but to put together some sort of like working group that can meet and report back to both the Board of Health and school committee, comprised of administrators, staff, school nurses, medical professionals, epidemiologists, statisticians, to try and formulate some sort of crystal ball, and I guess just give everybody some level of comfort that the work's being done, the research is being done. There's good smart people outside of all these busy folks here that can keep an eye on things and make a report at least once a week for boards to consider.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I appreciate Kevin's suggestion. I think anything we can do to help us, continue to measure and evaluate and make determinations about how we're doing and whether or not we need to change course or tighten up what we're doing is a good idea. We would certainly be amenable to providing people to participate in an effort like that. I will say, specific to Matthew's points that he was trying to make, we're hoping very much that people are going to adjust their decision making. The way they would behave in a typical year will not be the way they behave in this most atypical of years. And we're going to really, push for that. And if we find that there are families who are continuously taking advantage of us all and are not modifying their decision making, we will deal with that as we need to. And in terms of the idea that we are, and I thought I was very clear, we are looking to work and communicate directly with the Board of Health. So if there are guidelines and things that change and evolve, and the Board of Health is the first ones that are notified, and they let us know, we're going to take that into full consideration. We absolutely are committed to that. But typically that's not how it works. Typically when the Board of Health finds out, we all find out, because we have our own Department of Education it's giving us guidance, and we pay attention to the CDC and everything else. So it's very unlikely that we wouldn't already have known about it. And we anticipate that might very well happen. We're all trying to figure out how these things are going to go, and we're committed to adjusting accordingly as we go through it. Brad, do you have a point you wanted to make?
Yeah, I did. And I like Kevin. I like to see the good in people and hope for the best. I also think, though, that to the Petri dish comment is that I think the schools will be less Petri dishish this year, in part because the student numbers will be lower. If we have roughly 30% of our students going full remote, and then we split the other number of students in half every day, that's the cohort in place. So then we have, much smaller percentage, 35% of our students in a school building at the same time. And at the same time, they're wearing masks and keeping a social distance of at least 6 feet. That will make it less likely for the usual kind of contamination and contagion that happens in schools. It'll make it less likely for that to happen. So we can rely on people's taking this more seriously, which we are in some ways relying on and counting on. We can rely on people's essential goodness, as Kevin's pointing out. We can also rely on the basic health measures we're taking to help prevent some of these other spreads as well.
Good point.
Just add a small comment, Ms. Chairman.
Yeah. Yes, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah. In regard to the study that was released to the press by the UK investigators, in general, one should approach, shall we say, press releases, signs done by press release, what I can tell you is that the Commonwealth has been especially very, very alert and very proficient at screening and being aware of what's going on. And they're very quick to advise boards of health about good practices as well as municipalities. And also a lot of the studies, because is attracting many, many investigators. Some of them are controlled and not so controlled. So it requires a little patience and diligence to follow all the, shall we say, the releases that are going on. So I would echo that there's a layer, what the other speakers have, other answers have been. There's layers of masking, hygiene, and distancing. And so far, as reflected in the infection rate here in this town, the town is doing a very, very good job with it. And the whole idea is to keep it going in the schools. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. All right, Dorothy, all right. Next person, please.
Sue Pettingill, your name, your street, and your question, please. Sue Pettingill? Sue, you're muted.
I'm sorry.
That's
Okay. Sue Pettingill, I live in Sudbury, and I'm a teacher in the Littleton Public Schools. Understanding how the COVID virus is transmitted has implications for our procedures within the schools to prevent viral spread. My understanding is that the DESE guidance we're following is based on the idea that the virus is transmitted solely by droplets. A group of 239 prominent scientists have petitioned the World Health Organization to recognize the airborne spread of COVID. And we all know that our knowledge of COVID is evolving through the work of scientists across the world. Is the district and the Board of Health prepared to reconsider our plan as we learn more about how the virus is transmitted, or must we wait for new guidance to filter down through DESE?
Thank you, Sue.
I would probably say, listening to what you guys have talked about, you're ready to pivot to remote whenever you feel it's needed.
I agree. That's definitely true. And I think most of the discussion we've had about that has been about the public health metrics and the guidance that we've currently been given. I think Sue's question is would we lead out and change our direction based on our own analysis? And I don't think we'd be comfortable doing that. None of us is really qualified to determine if those 239 scientists are more right than the next 239 scientists. So we need to be able to rely on the consensus guidance that we get from the bodies that are directed to support us and the community and us as citizens. So I think that's the way I personally would be looking at it. I'm not quite sure what the Board of Health thinks about that type of question.
Thank you, Mike.
Jim, do you have anything to add to that at all?
I think it's really important. Again, as Mike Zeldin was mentioning, the science is evolving fast. And we have agencies like the CDC that take those studies and kind of digest them and provide us with the guidance that we need, and work with state health departments to do that. And state health departments then inform entities like DESE to make sure they're providing with the best guidance that's kind of peer reviewed, if you will. So again, to kind of echo Mike Fontanella's point, I don't know that any of us are qualified to go out on our own and take a group of studies and make a decision based on that.
Okay. Dorothy?
Mike Prohl, state your name, your street, and your question, please. Mike, you're muted. There you go.
Yep. Thank you very much. Mike Brew, White Pine Drive, Littleton, obviously. Sorry. So I'm seeing making its way around social media that Littleton teachers don't have access to PPE. So I guess I have two questions. One, in general, is the PPE, is it readily available for the teachers? And then more specifically, is there any PPE that the school thinks we need that we don't have or is presently back ordered?
Dr. Clenchey, do you want to address that question?
I'm going to actually ask Steve to begin the conversation first. We do have PP in our schools. In each of our schools, we've followed the DESE guidelines in terms of ordering in advance. And at this point in time, I'm going to have Steve chime in as well, because he's the one that's actually ordering and tracking.
So we have PPE in the district. It is starting to actually get disseminated into the buildings. That'll happen tomorrow and next week as well. We have face shields, both adult size and student size, for those situations where face shields are needed. We have gowns for those staff that need gowns. We have additional gowns on order. Right now they're back ordered, but we do have gowns available. We have gloves. We have masks. We have hand sanitizer, bottles of hand sanitizer that will be in the classroom. We're also, next week, they should be installed in the classrooms, touchless hand sanitizers. There will be one in each classroom. The bottles, we bought the bottles just in case the hand sanitizers didn't come in, but we expect those to come in next week. So those are available. We have KN95 masks. We have 3-ply, the green surgical masks. We have reusable 3-ply face masks that have been approved by the WHO. Those are on order. We'll have those available for staff. Those are reusable and washable. So we'll be able to give those to the staff if they choose to take some of those. We have multiple orders at multiple vendors for N95 masks. Those are extremely difficult to get. We ordered them 5 weeks ago, and there's still really no estimate as to when those will get delivered. But we do have KN95 masks. Those we have quite a few KN95 masks. So we have bought over 30,000 different various masks, between the disposable ones, the KN95 masks, the reusable masks. So we have lots of masks, and those are available now, and those will be disseminated into the schools for the staff to get and use those.
Question, Steve. Do you have child-size masks for the kids if they forget and not bring one home?
We have some child-size masks. We also have some child-sized masks, and we're trying to get some child-sized masks that have the clear window in the front of them. So if they're doing speech language, work with one of our staff, those will be available. We are also purchasing desk dividers, plastic transparent desk dividers, that the staff and the student can use those to help further separate the staff from the student if they're working on a one-on-one situation. Yes.
Great.
All right. Brad, do you have a comment you wanted to make?
I did. Thank you, Steve. That's a very detailed answer. I'll ask a follow-up question about, you're talking about the gowns and the face shields. In what situations would those be appropriate? Would it be the close, like occupational physical therapy, the speech therapy, perhaps?
Yes. OT, PTs, nursing staff, the evaluators, if they're doing evaluation of students, those will be available for those staff. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dorothy, next.
Erica, state your name, your street, and your question, please. Erica? There you go. You're muted, Erica.
Yeah, thank you. Erica Podgorny, Fox Lane. I joined a little late, so I'm sorry if this has been asked. the schools have been shut down for quite a while. I'm just wondering if the water has been tested to make sure that there's no bacteria buildup in the water supply.
Yes, Erica, thank you. We did address that earlier, but that's fine. The buildings haven't been shut down. They've actually been open. They're open all summer. There's various staff, and the custodial staff is always in there. We had Camp Tehadawon at Shaker Lane. But yes, all of our water systems are ready to go and flushed out and clean and good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good question, Erica. Dorothy?
Jennifer, state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, Jennifer Kane, 15 Whitetail Way, Littleton. I'm just going back to the contact tracing piece. It sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like if there is a positive case, that the Board of Health will notify the school, and the school will then kind of start working through where that student has been in order to figure out all of the people who may have come in contact with that person. Is that correct? And then those names will be provided to the public health nurses to track down?
Demography.
Oh, so again, when a person tests positive and they live in town or one of the towns that the district covers, we'll get the report. And when we get that report, we'll reach out to that person immediately. And what we'll do is confirm with the school department close contacts. Again, we'll start the conversation with the students, staff, or the students' parents to do the contact tracing. But again, the process that the school has set up with assigned seatings will help us greatly determine who needs to be contacted so we get that done quickly.
And I'd just like to confirm, Jim, I think the way you explained it earlier in the meeting was that your trigger minimally is notification from the state. But if we found out before you did from the state, we're certainly going to be in contact with the Board of Health about that. So that could be the trigger as well, correct?
Sure, and we certainly could do initial outreach based on the reports. But again, we would want to see the lab report because that's part of what informs what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Question regarding contacting the parents. That's fine for a minor, but what about the older kids in high school? Is that kind of tricky, or will you still contact the family?
It still would be the parents. And that's why, hopefully they can provide a better detail of who they were with. Sometimes we need to have parents help with students. We've noticed that over the summertime. Parents have been very good at helping us get compliance with people that are younger. But again, that knowing where that kid is in the school is going to be really helpful.
Okay, great. All right, Dorothy, is there another question?
Yes. Jonathan Castillo, your question, please, and your street.
Sure. Jonathan Castillo, Richard Way. So my question is both to the school committee and the Board of Health. So in light of the fact that the cold and flu season is going to start in about 6 weeks or so, and many of the symptoms that are recognized for flu crossed over with COVID-19, isn't it a tall order to ask the parents and the staff to try and recognize these things amongst the students? So wouldn't it then be a better idea to have a proactive approach, sort of aligned with what Melina asked earlier? Implement some sort of testing. And I realize what you had mentioned, Mike, that there's no funds available for it, but wouldn't it be, would the committees be open to trying to identify an approach that is amenable to having some sort of pre-screening of the staff and students, so that when you have the different cohorts come in on Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, we can keep the students that potentially test positive, or the staff that potentially test positive, keep them out of the schools, and thereby prevent any issues from arising.
In terms of the way you phrased the question, Jonathan, yes, we would be amenable to exploring opportunities and options for that. And we actually had a couple of emails going back and forth today, and I have some bad news. Your name was on them. Sorry, Jonathan. Yeah. So we are amenable to that, and we will start to explore that. I will say that based on the reading that I've done and comments I've heard from Mike Zeldin and Jim Gareffi in previous conversations I've had with them, I'd like to think there's a solution to that, but I'm not entirely sure there is. I think we should exhaust ourselves to make that determination about whether or not it is or isn't available and viable and beneficial. But I would just caution that I don't think there's a panacea in terms of testing out there right now today. I have a question on my own mind because I sent 2 sons back to college and they both got tested on campus. So that piqued my interest. I was like, why are colleges feeling like this is doable, but public schools and public municipalities haven't been given that same guidance? So I think it's legitimate to explore that. And I'll emphasize again that we have no problem devoting ourselves to looking at that and exhausting the opportunity to find out if it's viable or not.
Okay.
Kevin?
If the director of Parks and Rec can coordinate a drive up flu clinic, I think we can, all these brains in this room can figure out how to coordinate some sort of testing, get some finances and try.
I don't disagree with you, Kevin, but I would argue that if it were that easy, why hasn't any other municipality done this as part of their school or reopening strategy? I just don't know. I'm not qualified to really figure that out. I'm committed. I'll commit ourselves to participating in the process, but I'm not sure that it's quite as clear cut as we would otherwise like it to be. I wish I had a different look at it. I really do.
Okay, Dorothy?
Chairman, we have about 4 or 5 questions left. I'm not sure where you would like to continue going.
I guess we can answer 4 or 5 more questions.
Okay.
Sure.
Joanne Derry? Okay. Joanne Derry, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, I'm Joanne Deary. I'm from Harwood Avenue. I have 2 questions. First, some in other countries and also at many universities in the USA, they're looking at the effluent from the dorms, the dormitories. They're testing it once or twice a week, I guess. And it's just one test. I mean, it's like a bulk test, but then they know that somebody in that dorm has it, or they know that everybody in that dorm doesn't have it. I wondered if the Board of Health has considered doing that in the Littleton public schools. And my second question is, what are the health implications of having, 10-ish students eat their lunches with no mask on in the classroom when this is an airborne disease? Thank you.
Jim, do you know anything about that study?
So I've heard of a number of studies where they're testing wastewater to do that, to try to get, because they can trace, and track it to the wastewater. I don't know how that all gets set up, or whether we are, whether you're testing the effluent coming out of the building at the high school or all the schools, how you might even accomplish doing that. It's an interesting thought. I just don't know how it would practically work. I'm sorry, the second part of that was?
About eating lunch in the classrooms with masks off.
Sure. So the DESE guidance provides layouts for the tables, distancing requirements for the tables. And again, just like the restaurant requirement, going out to eat, they're actually a little bigger than the spacing's a little bigger than the restaurant guidance. They actually want the kids 6 feet apart or plexiglass between them. So they have the space to do that. Schools have manners of which you can do multiple seatings to make sure you reduce the number of students in the cafeteria at any given time. Adding fresh air to the space to make sure that you're getting good turnover in those spaces, or even having kids eat outside if the weather permits.
Okay.
Where did she go? Oh, there she is. Julie Rupp, your name, your street, and your question, please.
Oh, hi.
You're muted. Hi. There you go. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. This is Julie Rupp, New Estate Road. Thanks
Thanks for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. So I raised my hand also a question about the lunch, but it's a little different. So at Russell Street, my understanding is the plan is for students to eat at their desks in their classroom. And so the configuration regarding tables would not necessarily apply, is my understanding. And so if the desks are 6 feet apart and then you have students, you know, talking, or like somebody laughs or somebody coughs or somebody sneezes, then that space, that 6 foot space, seems like it would be impacted by droplets or aerosols. And so I'm just wondering if then the students and the teachers are spending the entire day in the room. I'm just wondering if we can ask Russell Street, you know, to relook at their approach for that. It just seems, I'm concerned about students eating and talking and laughing and spending, you know, the entire day in their classroom. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I thought they were going home for lunch.
No.
No, okay.
No. Dr. Clenchey, do you want to talk about Russell Street maybe a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's more than just Russell Street. We're following DESE guidance, and at the same time, if we were to put students in a cafeteria, it may make a worse situation in the end in terms of having so many students in one area in a short period of time. What we would do in that particular case, if it was as pronounced as some of the examples that you were discussing, is we'd remove those kids from the room and have the room cleaned as a precaution. So it really does depend on the situation. And if the weather's nice, we'll be taking our kids outside to eat. We're doing box lunches this year, and anything we can do to help the situation, we will. But if we're going to, our students need to eat, and we're just trying to create the safest environment for them to do that.
Brad?
Dr. Clenchey, what the situation he's describing didn't seem that pronounced to me. Students laughing and talking, and someone sneezing and coughing. I'm wondering if maybe Jim could comment on, because I'm certainly not well versed in the restaurant guidelines, and how what we're describing in a school setting, individual desk, 6 or more feet apart, how that corresponds with what the public health guidance we're getting for other places where people might eat inside.
So the guidance for restaurants is that the tables are 6 feet apart. So, and that no more than 6 people sit at a table. So that's really kind of the basic component of the restaurant guidance. Some of the other things that will help in the classroom, if you can open the windows, if you're bringing in 100% fresh air. Again, loud talking and laughing. Again, think about a cold day when you're outside, you can actually see your breath, and you got to get a sense of where these things may generate some anxiety. The sneezing, obviously, as Dr. Clenchey said, you want to kind of remove people, clean the space, and again with allergy seasons, you may end up getting that. Maybe lunch setting in a classroom is set up a little different so you can maximize that 6 feet. I've heard schools try other strategies where they'll use a different part of the building, or as he said, go outside and eat. So again, I think we need to be prepared to handle those situations, but I think the layered process where we have the extra air, where we have the desks apart, where we have the people far enough apart, I think all of those things add up to be protective to people in those classrooms.
All set?
Kevin had his hand up.
I'm sorry?
I was just wondering if there's any data that calls out the air exchange rate in the rooms in each classroom.
Steve Mark, our business manager who supervises our custodial staff as well, is shaking his head no. Our systems are not set up that way, the way they might be in a more stringent environment like a hospital or a clean room manufacturing facility. We do know that our HVAC systems, both the rooftop units and the classroom units, are definitely up to code, and we're making changes to the filtration. So they're going to function as well as they're designed to. They're fully functional, will be in good shape. But they are what they are. They're school, HVAC units for school buildings. That's what they're designed to be, and that's what they are.
And that's one of the questions we're going to ask the engineering company.
Yeah, I would get an air exchange rate on each room just to be comfortable with it.
And it's entirely possible that we haven't really gotten into the entire scope of work or understanding exactly what they're going to do, but it's entirely possible that they'll be able to take a snapshot for us.
Yeah,
and that'll help. And then, but obviously it's a snapshot while they're there, and then, but we'll take advantage of it if we can.
Yeah, typically the interior rooms do not as well as the.
Yeah, sure. Makes sense.
All set? Okay. Vaughn Cook, your name, your street, and your question, please.
I know her.
Vaughn Cook? Vaughn, are you there? Okay. We'll move on to Shayna Garlisi. Could you pull Shayna Garlisi in, please? Shayna Garlisi, your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, this is Shayna Garlisi, Boxwood Drive in Littleton. And I just had some questions about the ventilation systems, specifically in Shaker Lane, where we aren't able to get fans in the windows based on the way the windows open. And, the rooms get very hot. We've been in there the last few days and it's been kind of cool. But if we go in following a hot day, it's 80 degrees in the classroom and 50 to 60 degrees outside. So given the lack of ventilation and the fact that we're trying to space our desks 6 feet apart, but having a very hard time fitting enough in the classroom, we're starting to block off access to sinks and access to doors. And we have removed a lot of furniture and it's getting very tight. So I was just wondering how that impacts students being able to walk throughout the classroom or stand near a sink when there's a desk placed, 2 to 3 feet in front of it, as well as, there was training today mentioning that if we're working one-on-one with students, we should be wearing gowns and extra PPE. And in order to fit in a student table or a teacher table where we can work with 2 to 3 students at a time in that setting, we then need extra gowns and, we're really stretching the limits of our classrooms to fit the desks in. So I guess my question is just at what point are we looking at, where the students are not 6 feet apart and we're then needing to notify the entire class if there's a case of COVID, because we really, as much as we're spacing their desks 6 feet apart, they're moving throughout that classroom within the 6 feet of each other in order to get to their desks and back and forth, and then having their masks off for a significant portion of the time in the classroom when they're eating snacks and lunches and having their mask breaks.
Thank you, Shayna.
All right. Dr. Clenchey, do you want to address the concerns that Shayna is raising, the relatives?
Sure. And Shayna, it would be helpful if you could tell me how many students are in your class in each cohort.
We've taken her name down, Dr. Clenchey. You could.
Oh,
just answer it generally. I don't think I have to get specific to Shayna, but just generally speaking.
My understanding, we don't have our administrators with us this evening, our principals, but when I was talking to the principal today, I'm trying to remember the numbers, but we're looking at 10 to 12 in the classroom. And without actually having this conversation with the teacher, the first question I'd be asking is, do you have 10 or 12 desks in the classroom, or did you keep all of your desks in the classroom? We were in rooms with 10 to 12 desks, 6 feet apart, with the school committee and the administrative team, and it didn't seem that crowded to me, or I didn't have any comments from anybody there that felt it was crowded. I do understand they're moving around but they're wearing masks except when they're eating lunch. If they're going to have mask breaks, I'm assuming that as long as the weather continues, they'll certainly be going outside. Even if they aren't, they can go to other areas of the school and have a supervised mask break. So there was some concern about they're close to the sink. Well, that's somewhat easily fixable if we use hand sanitizer rather than that. I mean, there are going to be some concessions that have to be made. We are moving the furniture out of those classrooms. It's not essential, so that should help as well. But I'm going to pop by tomorrow and personally look at the room myself.
All right, thank you.
Lily Ogden, Lily Ogden, your street and your question, please. Lily?
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a social studies teacher at the middle school.
Could I have your
My
street
question
and
is that
Lily Ogden, could I get your town?
2 days ago in the New York Times,
Lily,
Dr. Sean O'Leary, the
Lily,
vice chairman.
sorry, Lily, Lily.
Lily,
Sorry,
we need to
we
have
just need your town.
Your name and your town?
Or your address?
Hello?
Lily?
Lily, you need to leave state your name and your address, please.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Lily Ogden, I'm in Hudson, Massachusetts. I'm a teacher at the middle school.
Thank you.
Okay, so 2 days ago, Dr. Sean O'Leary, the vice chairman of the American Academy of Pediatrics Committee on Infectious Disease, said, quote, substantial community spread in many parts of the United States corresponds with more infections among children. Anthony Fauci, the leading infectious disease expert in the country, also has said, we quote, we believe 20 to 40% of cases are asymptomatic. And my question is, based on these facts from these experts, can you guarantee that the protocols in place for our schools will not lead to somebody in the community getting sick or worse? And if not, then why are we gambling with such a serious and potentially tragic plan? Thank you.
The answer is no, we can't guarantee it, and we've never indicated, any of us or any other municipality or any other governing body that measures this type of stuff would ever say that's the case. The other areas of the country that have tried to open and have seen greater spread have started from a much different baseline than where we're starting from in terms of the current infection rates and testing positivity. I will also say that the American Pediatric Association and Dr. Fauci have both unequivocally stated that they believe it's the best interests of children to be in school if they can be when it's safe. And the guidance that we've been given relative to our current public health metrics are that we are in a position where we can certainly consider having some students in the building, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay. Jessica, your name, your street, and your question, please. Jessica, you're muted. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Schoeffel. I am a teacher at Russell Street and I live in Acton. My question is relating back to the previous questions about lunch in the classroom. I think there's a lot of concern around that, understandably. So obviously when kids are eating lunch, they're not wearing a mask, and they're in that same space that they're going to be in throughout the rest of the day. And so my question is specifically if anyone on the board might be able to speak to whether they think it's safe to have kids be talking during lunch or whether it needs to be a silent lunch, to prevent the particles from spreading into the room. It's something we've talked about many times, and the answer keeps kind of like fluctuating. So I'm not quite sure what the plan will be there. And I would be just curious to hear if anyone has any insight onto whether that would be a necessary precaution or not. Thanks.
I'm just going to ask if Jessica, I would assume that, I guess, we'll assume that from a perspective of if we think it's a risk from a health perspective, we'll leave that to Mr. Gareffi as the public health agent. And then Dr. Clinchy, could you talk about if we've had discussions on our task forces or in our faculty meetings about talking or not talking during lunch? Let's start with Jim.
Sure. So again, back to your point about no guarantee, again, the distancing is really important. The ventilation in the classroom is really important. These are going to be the things that help you kind of mitigate that risk of having the masks off for that short period of time while the kids are reading. Whether you're talking about having classrooms where you're just talking in a normal indoor voice, that may be something that you recommend to the kids. Just, the louder, more excited you are, obviously, the more spread you may have. But again, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the DESE guidance actually talks about one of the strategies of having kids eat their lunch at their desk, because you're by keeping everybody in their same desk, you're keeping that cohort together. So you're reducing the probability that they're running into other people and potentially other people who might have the illness. So again, doing it, keeping all the kids in one classroom, keeping them 6 feet apart. If you want to have a conversation with the students about, talking with a normal indoor voice, making sure the ventilation is proper in the room. I think those are the things that are going to make it safe to have lunch in the classroom.
And Jim has covered most of the areas I was going to talk about, but we have to also remember that our students aren't facing each other when they're eating as well. I think talking in a quieter voice is acceptable. I find it very hard to imagine as an educator that we have our kids in a classroom with masks on, and then we finally give them a chance to take their masks off, and we're not going to have them talk. I mean, part of what we emphasize in our district is the importance of SEL, and social emotional learning occurs when students are communicating with each other. So I'm all for a quieter voice, but I think the fact that the desks are positioned in a fashion that they're not talking to each other is very helpful.
Casey Taylor, your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, my name's Casey Taylor. I'm a teacher at Shaker Lane School, and I live in Ayer, Massachusetts on Littleton Road. I actually had 2 questions, but before I asked my 2 questions, I just had a point to make from Shana Garlisi's point that was made and Dr. Clenchy's point with the number in each cohort and with the desks. Is it okay if I address that?
I'd actually prefer, Casey, if we do that at a school committee meeting, or if you want to take it up directly with the administration when you're at work, that would be terrific and fine too.
Okay.
If your questions are related to the public health stuff, we're ready for them.
Okay, one of my questions is kind of along those lines. For the Board of Health, as of right now, I have 10 desks in my room, which is over the number of students that I currently have in one of my cohorts. And I don't think that it was kind of taken into consideration how much we use all of our boards teaching at Shaker Lane School. So I took into account 6 feet from my boards, but I'm curious if we could, how the face shields work and how I think plexiglass might be the wrong term, but we ordered the plexiglass desk shields. I was wondering what the Board of Health's opinion was on the desk shields. If we were 6 feet or less than 6 feet, if the front row students had those shields.
Sure. So again, I assume when you're talking boards, you're talking about blackboards, whiteboards, presentation boards in the classroom. I guess my thought is that the 6 feet is more important than maybe having the ability to use all the boards, and maybe there needs to be some kind of modification in the use of those boards. I would rather see that 6 foot maintained than use things like plexiglass if we don't have to.
And I like to echo that comment. A couple of the speakers have indicated that that there will be less than 6 feet of spacing. None of the guidance and none of the planning we've done assumes less than 6 feet of distancing. And we insist that there be at least 6 feet of distance. Now, when people are moving through the room in a given day, you're not going to maintain 6 feet every moment of every day. But correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. It's the 6 feet. And if you're passing by someone and you're masked, that we think that's not a high risk factor. And I appreciate the comment that Jim made, and Dr. Clenchy made the same comment, that we are going to have to adapt in the classroom. It won't be the same classroom experience that it has been in normal years. That's unfortunate, but that's the reality of the situation. And we would expect that everyone, and I appreciate Jim's emphasis on that, is that the 6 feet distancing is crucial, and everything has to be done to maintain that. And that's what we fully expect as a school committee is going to be done. But Jim, if you could just, again, the passing by type thing during moments in the day.
No, I mean, and so I'm not sure, kids get up and move about. That close contact is really that, getting within that 6 feet for more than that 10 to 15 minute time frame. So the casual passing is not considered a close contact.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I've just heard from
Brad, sorry, Brad Austin, school committee member, has his hand up. Sorry, Lisa, thank you.
No, I just thought that she had a second question, and I didn't know if we could give a chance to ask or not. I'm sorry.
Were you taking her down? Should I pull her back up for the second question?
Sure.
Casey
Lisa, it's your
Taylor?
meeting.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Could you pull Casey Taylor back in, please? Thank you. Casey Taylor in, please. Could you pull Casey Taylor in, Janet?
Yes.
I think it would help if Casey raised her hand.
She is. There we go. Casey, did you have a second question?
I did. Thanks, Brad, for acknowledging that. My second question, so today at school, the teachers received a really phenomenal training from our school nurse. It was really informational. It was eye-opening as well. I just had a question. Our nurses are going to be really working their tails off throughout this entire thing. So I was wondering if there was a plan in place with our nurses being right first, close contact, if there was a plan if any of our school nurses then tested positive.
Dr. Clinchie?
Yes, there is. We've actually advertised for an LPN, one or two of them, and we also work with a nursing service that provides nurses on an as-needed basis.
Thank you.
Right. So how many more people do we have for questions?
We have 2 questions of members that have not asked, and then doubles. If you have 3 questions.
All right, so let's give the people that have not had a chance to ask their questions to ask them now.
Okay. Mary Lindstrom, your name, your street, and your question, please.
Mary Lindstrom on East Suffolk Drive. And as background, I'm an environmental health and safety coordinator at MIT. And I just wanted to give a brief background on the testing of sewer samples, since that was brought up as an idea earlier. So one of the labs that I manage safety for is one of the labs involved with that project. And so the company, if you're interested in pursuing that, is called BioBot, and they have a form on their website to request more information. And the process basically involves sampling devices that will take samples from the waste lines and then collecting samples from that device to send in for testing for the viral RNA.
Great. Thank you very much for that information, Mary. So we're just going to take the people that have asked have one question, their first question, and then we won't be taking any more follow-up questions.
Okay, thank you. Beth Bell, your name, your question, and your street, please.
Hi, my name is Beth Bell. I live on Snow Drive in Littleton. I'm also a teacher at Shaker Lane. And today, when the HVAC systems went on, the blowers spewed out a bunch of dirt.
If you have a specific...
I'm going to get to your specific question if you'll let me finish, please. Today,
I think it's a question. I think
a lot of dust, dirt, and I'm wondering...
Okay. Thank you.
I think it's a question that in the issue that needs to be addressed directly with the administration.
Mike, I'm wondering.
It's Lisa's meeting.
And guaranteeing.
All right.
Would you like me to proceed?
We are addressing all of the HVAC unit ventilators again. We're asking our technician to double check and make sure all of those are done.
Okay. Thank you. Dorothy, anybody else?
Yes, we do. We have, where are we at here? My apologies. Matthew Nordhaus, please, your name, your street, and your question.
Hi, this is actually Christine Nordhaus. Can you hear me?
Yes, Christine.
Thank you. We live together. Christine Nordhaus, Star Hill. My hand has been lowered twice tonight, not by me. So I just want to make sure that I have the opportunity to ask my 3 minutes worth of questions and comments before you disconnect me. Thank you. So to start, I wanted to speak to the question of, Kevin Baker made a comment about how people are inherently good and they're going to keep their kids home when they're sick, and it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not people are good. Some people are forced to send their children to school. It's a matter of their absolute necessity. And so I think that it's a very important question, and that shouldn't have a punitive response. If people need to send a sick kid to school and they're not keeping them home, I really hope that the schools will and the Board of Health will take a comprehensive approach to looking into that. That was a comment. But I had some questions about the public health nurse and the interactions with the school nurses. I assume that you mentioned that there's a state database that the Board of Health, as authorized users of, they can look up students from outside the Neshoba district, health district, to sort of, so can we authorize our school nurses to have access to that database, please, so that they can look up school choice kids from outside our health district, to check to see if they are sick or if they've been, can they keep tabs in some way? So that was one question. Did it make sense?
Next question, Christine.
Did that question make sense?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I think I can answer that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you understood what I was asking.
So the database that I'm speaking of is called the Maven System, and it's not designed to track students or be able to track people who are sick. It's designed to provide public health departments with the lab reports and the information they need to do these contact tracing and communicable disease follow-ups. So it's not something that you could search a name, search a town. It's essentially meant for public health work. So if we know of somebody, if the school nurse and the public health nurse receive a report, they can then check on that person in the system. But it's not a system that you can say, hey, we have this list of students in the school. Can you look up on the state database and see if any of them are sick? It's not designed that way. The database is designed to handle all the communicable diseases the state has us follow up on. So not just the COVID-19 that we're doing now, but we use it for all kinds of diseases. So it couldn't do what you're asking it to do. It's not designed for that.
Okay, one more question, Dorothy.
There are two more new questions. I'm not sure if, would you like to take those?
I'll take the last two. Yep.
Okay. Kristen Hemis, your question, your street, and your name, please. Kristen Hemis? You're muted. Kristen, you're muted. One more, Kristen. Okay, we'll move on to Zach Hurdle. Please state your name, your street, and your question, please. Zach, you're muted.
Hi, Zach Hurdle, down the road here, Air, Massachusetts. I'm also a teacher at Littleton High School. I really appreciate you taking my call tonight. My question for the Board of Health, has the town of Littleton set a threshold of positive COVID cases, whether it's a hard number or percentages, in any given municipal building that could potentially require a closure of that specific building? If so, what is that threshold? Thank you.
Jim, you have that, or Mike?
So from the Board of Health standpoint, we have not set any firm and fast number for any building for the closure of that building. For the schools in particular, DESE had put together protocols and considerations for how you might decide when to close a school building. So we certainly will look at the number of cases in town. The governor provided with the new map that the school departments use to kind of determine what learning style that they're using. We'll use that information. We'll use information we know from contact tracing to help us make a decision and provide that information, essentially consultation with the school department so they can make a decision about that.
I appreciate that response, Jim, and that's along the lines of the way we're thinking about it, not in terms of hard numbers, because we haven't received any guidance from anyone that we would expect to in terms of that. We're looking at it as there are multiple ways of evaluating the data, and we want to do that in conjunction with guidance from the Board of Health as well as from DESE and the state overall. And that's our plan. That's how we're going to proceed.
Great. Any board comments from either board before we get going, before we adjourn? Brad, Kevin, yep. Mike?
I'll just say this is really helpful. Thanks for having us, and especially thanks to Jim. You answered a lot of our questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Yep. Kevin?
Just a couple thoughts. I really do think the air exchange rate needs to be checked in every single classroom and office and all the school buildings, just to make sure it's safe. And Jim, I didn't know if you had seen any numbers out there for guidance on the exact rate per hour, which is acceptable. And
no, I mean, they talk about increasing fresh air. They talk about modifications to make to the system. Some of the things Mike talked about, they talk about changing the efficiency of the filters out as your system allows.
Yeah, there's got to be a number.
Yeah,
gotta be a number.
Yeah, there's no number. Not that I've seen in the guidance.
I think that might help us establish a benchmark and just relieve some concerns. And second, I'd like to make a motion to establish a working group comprised of Littleton residents that can sort of report to the Board of Health and school committee just regarding different concerns on a weekly basis as we move forward in open schools. I don't know if I can get a second.
I don't think we need to vote on that, Kevin, but I think we can discuss it at our next meeting. And maybe we can have Mike or Dr. Clunchy come talk about that too.
Yeah, and I guess what would be helpful, like I said, we're definitely amenable to that. And as always, the devil is in the details. I guess I'd like to see, before we're able to take a vote on it or discuss it, is a more definitive framework of who we think is appropriate to be involved in that, the timing of the meetings, the scope of what that committee would be charged with. And once we have a better understanding of that, I think it'd be easier to come to a consensus on doing something like that.
Awesome.
But we're definitely amenable to it, and I think that it would be good if that type of planning took place between the Board of Health and the school department as we get ready to figure out the best way to do something like that.
Great. Anybody else have any questions or comments at all that they want to make?
I would just like to say thank you as well. And just before we do adjourn, we're in open meeting right now. We'll need to take our own roll call vote prior to LCDV signing off. So if we could just, when you're ready, Lisa, just let us know and we'll take that motion and vote.
All right. So Board of Health, you guys all ready to adjourn? Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Should we let school committee adjourn first and then we'll sign off?
Thank you. School committee, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I wanted to say thank you to everybody, and I would like to make a motion to adjourn. Thank you so much for coming.
Did I get a second on the school committee motion?
I'll second Matt.
All right. I'd like to take a quick roll call vote for the school committee. Timolin?
Timolin Rossius, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Brad?
Brad Austin, yes.
And Mike Fontella votes yes as well. Thank you, Lisa, and to the Board of Health and Jim.
Yes, thank
very
you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Scott, Janet. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn from the Board of Health?
I make a motion that the Board of Health adjourn.
I second. And do a roll call. We'll do Kevin Baker,
Kevin Baker, yes.
Gino.
Gino say yes. I say thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. Louise,
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Selden, yes.
and Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks so much for being here.